Hello. We are now living in one of the most pivotal and transformational periods in modern history. There now exists unprecedented opportunities for change and growth on a broad spectrum of levels, including business, personal, and society. We are now in the gap between an industrial, information-driven society and a responsibility, integrity-driven society. This makes China at this time the broadest and most resource-rich platform for growing wealth on the planet. Let's review some statistics for the United States economy. The AAA debt rating of the United States government is no longer sacrosanct. The U.S. is currently running a deficit equal to 11% of GDP. Legislation is needed to boost the debt ceiling, currently at $12.1 trillion, to avoid an unprecedented default on the nation's debt obligations. The government now projects running ongoing deficits equal to 6% of GDP once things return to, quote, normal. We have a liquidity-driven stock market. Inflation is on the horizon and the dollar is depreciating. 49% of the United States debt is now owned by foreign entities. The Federal Reserve's monetary policy is to borrow and print. Consumers are over-leveraged and must save or pay down debt. The nation's debt will equal $17 to $21 trillion in 10 years. 77 million people, or 20% of the total population, will be over 65 years of age in 10 years. On September 17, 2008, the Treasury, a la Timothy Geithner, the man who willingly and consciously gave 100 cents on the dollar to every bank that placed bets with AIG, even though AIG was bankrupt, announced HP 1144, or the Treasury Supplementary Financing Account. This is basically a device allowing a huge expansion of the Federal Reserve's balance sheet without causing any change to currency in circulation or reserve deposits. In 2007, the Fed balance sheet was around $850 billion. In 2008, it ballooned to $2.2 trillion. The CRB index for commodity prices is at an 11-year high. There is 10 to 20% unemployment, and 56% of the jobs lost so far are permanent, not to return. The value of the dollar is down 15% in the last 6 months. The Taliban controls 80% of Afghanistan, and recently CIT became the 5th largest company in American history to file for bankruptcy, putting thousands of businesses at risk of losing critical financing for their operations. The United States will come back and come together better and stronger than ever before. You may ask, isn't being in China escaping my responsibility to the United States as a citizen and patriot? My answer is contrary, in fact. Rather than escaping the ramifications of the struggles in the United States and the gap we are currently experiencing globally, I am on the leading edge of supporting and defending our rights and privileges by making entry into China feasible and successful during this incredible, pivotal, and important period, allowing greater command of resources in the fastest growing and most populous country in the world. It is quite easy to get emotional about these issues, so let's take a step back and examine the secular trends, which have been an amazing barometer of our ability to handle the ebbs and flows of a growing society and interconnected world. We had a secular bear market lasting 16 years, starting in 1966 and ending in 1982. The bull market took off from there and lasted 18 years until the year 2000, ending with the tech crash and dot-com bubble. Yet we refused to accept. We are going through a significant amount of pain right now due to the fact that in 2000 we allowed our economy to be floated on cheap money, which fueled speculation and over-leveraging of the backbone and soul of American wealth, their homes. Except for some bounces caused by 0% interest rates from the Federal Reserve and broad speculation on a bust in the housing market, this secular bear market started in 2000 and will likely end in 2018. That leaves us with approximately 8 years before we right the ship and start growing robustly. Please note and contemplate that as the ship is righted in the United States, there is a global ship, a spaceship some might say, that is being righted as well. China and the U.S. are pivotal to this balance, and I believe tremendous synergy can be created, making this transition extremely lucrative and foster tremendous growth. I also believe we are 2 years into a 10-year gap, running counter to the previous 10, which were the bubble years. The gap is where change, growth, and transformation occur. I have my eyes set on the 10 years after that change, 2018 to 2028. In those years, the graduates of our program will participate in the broadest and most spectacular accumulation of wealth in a generation. That makes those age 22 to 32 the sweet spot for taking on change and executing in the new responsibility and integrity-driven society. I will reiterate, we are now living in one of the most pivotal and transformational periods in modern history. There now exists unprecedented opportunities for change and growth on a broad spectrum of levels, including business, personal, and society. We are now in the gap between an industrial, information-driven society and a responsibility, integrity-driven society. This makes China at this time the broadest and most resource-rich platform for growing wealth on the planet. I have to ask, with regard to China, are you in or are you out? Now is the time to decide, because the next 8 years will determine what kind of relationship and future you have to China and quite possibly the planet. Like it or not, China is increasingly hard to ignore for both its strength and its opportunities. The rub is that to join the high growth trajectory of China, you must choose to enter another kind of gap, a significant cultural, social, and language gap. Getting over it means letting go of your grip on tightly or not so tightly held beliefs, attitudes, and values. I did not say abandon, just letting go. They are always there for you to pick back up again. Since you or your company is or will be effectively in a gap over the next 8 years, whether you stay in the United States or enter China, I would recommend going to the gap where growth exists, as long as you utilize my system and support. In fact, due to the changing nature of the growth in China, I believe that a successful crossing of this gap without my program will be highly unlikely, impossible, or unfeasible for more than 80% of those who attempt it, given the new requirements being presented. Now that you can clearly see the trends, doesn't it just make sense to plan accordingly? Isn't it time at a minimum to plan for the years of 2018 to 2028? I know China is. Can we persist and sustain, ignoring and denying the transformation that is upon us? It is safe here, it is doable, and it is challenging. It is time for Americans to venture out, uproot, and develop new patterns of life and living, just as those who claimed and staked out the West. It is time to leave the comfort of home because the future is calling you. It is not simply romantic. It is much more significant and substantial than romance. Those seeking romance or to live on a superficial tapestry end up in a cheap copy of home, such as a foreign bar, as the Chinese do the only thing they can with you, take your money. Romance and lifestyle are not the driving force that ends up leading the world. It is the American spirit. I believe being in the gap is fundamental to growth and inherently involves personal challenge. The bigger the gap, the bigger the rewards, and the more likely you will give up or lose your way. I do not want this to happen to you. The good news is that due to the programs and methods I have developed, it is possible to get you in, through, and over the significant China gap faster and easier than ever before, allowing you to achieve tremendous results in a very short amount of time. All it takes is an upfront, focused commitment from you. The time is right and your presence is required, and that has made the resources available. Please join me in discovering specifically how our program is suited to whom and how we have made this daring and awesome goal so accessible to so many people. I sincerely and forthrightly state that our program is the right decision and substantially helps anyone wanting to live or work in China. The difference between entering China and going through the barrier versus bouncing off and being rejected by the barrier is simply a matter of education and information, the type which I am extending to you today through these videos. The answers are here. I invite you to examine them and then decide. Decide to take a definitive action and step up to join us in co-creating a program that will transform the world.